Did you mute yourself?
World's Finest is back together to talk about the Bruce Brown deal, the new landscape in the Western Conference, and a whole lot more. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making this your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can catch the show. And it's the best way for you to support the show. And you get to join great commenters like Carlos, who's in there this morning, and Big Honey, and CJ Morgan, and lots of stuff to get to today on today's show. Hope you guys had a great 4th of July weekend if you celebrate. Had myself a lovely weekend. Slow-cooked ribs, crisped potato salad, did the works, Adam. I did awesome stuff. Adam Mares is with me, my co-host, my friend. You can find him on Twitter at Adam_Mares. Today we're going to talk about the Bruce Brown deal, since Adam didn't get to give his reactions on this show. We're going to talk about some of the other free agency acquisitions, what the Nuggets roster looks like. We'll look at the rest of the Western Conference, and I have a take on the Western Conference in the second segment. And in the third segment, going to have to talk about the Kevin Durant situation, what that means for the Nuggets if he heads to the West. We'll talk about all that and more on today's
Real quick,
show.
Matt, we'll add one quick topic here. We do have a good question coming in from Griff Black, if you might want to address it quickly here.
DeAndre Jordan backup point center like Jokic. I'm not ruling it out. Look, people people make changes. People grow, Adam. People grow in their careers all the time. And what better story would that be than having DeAndre Jordan evolve into a point center? All right, let's go ahead and start here. So I talked about the Bruce Brown deal on Friday, and basically my big takeaway, Adam, was like, hey, all the stuff we said yesterday, yeah, okay, all of it's better now. Like, all of it is better after the DeAndre Jordan deal. You talked about more about context on the DeAndre Jordan deal. I talked about more context on the DeAndre Jordan deal. Ultimately, like, understandably, people in the Nuggets front office were like, why is everyone so like focused on the DeAndre Jordan deal?
They were not happy with the reaction to it, for sure.
They were like, it's a minimum deal that we signed for a guy that we're not even necessarily expecting to play every game. There's a lot of like, what's the problem here?
Right.
And that just shows you how bad DJ's reputation is on the internet. Like, that's, to me, is just kind of the lesson is like, look, man, it was like, he was a meme. Like, he was a meme. But the Bruce Brown addition really kind of smoothed all that over. If you look at just the additions of like KCP and Bruce Brown, we came into the offseason saying the Denver Nuggets had to address perimeter defense while not giving up offensive spacing. They improved their versatility on top of that. I mean, I don't want to grade it because I need some time to kind of figure out exactly what I think the grade on it is. But I would say I would now consider, especially as we're a couple of days removed from it, and I look at the rest of the Western Conference and what this free agency market looked like, I kind of consider this offseason a pretty rousing success for Denver, all things considered. What do you think?
I think so too. I mean, when the Nuggets are at a point right now where all successes, all gains have to be viewed through the lens of, does it get you to be a true title contender? And I think with Denver, the answer is probably. It's not like certainly. You know, there were maybe trade. I don't think the free agency market was one where you were going to get a certainly. It was more the collection of trades and this or that. Could they have used the draft picks and the players on their roster to trade in a way that brought a player? Maybe, in theory, there could have been a better group of defenders or whatever, more versatile group, whatever brought around. But I think when you look at how they used just the free agency portion of this and the KCP trade, the Nuggets are, in my opinion, the best version of the Jokic era. And not just the best version, but more importantly, the best version that is going to be required in the defense, defensively in the Jokic era. And that's what both KCP and Bruce Brown represent, are two players who can play separate in the same role or can play together alongside each other in this very defensive-minded lineup that I think is going to define the Nuggets' success this season.
What was the best like team prior to this that you think? Like, what was the best team?
Well, I mean, I think it was clearly the 5 days.
Sure.
Honestly,
Maybe I should. Yeah,
I think it's important though. Actually, I actually think it's important to count that one because it was a version of it, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at it, that team had Will Barton at the shooting guard. It had Monte Morris as the backup point guard. Who was the backup two? Do you remember who? It's almost like you have to go back and like kind of. Was it Devin Harris? Like I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I know Paul Millsap was in the mix at this time as well. I think this version is better just by virtue of you have Jokic, who's better than he's ever been. Presumably, you got Aaron Gordon now, obviously been with the team for a while. I think he is next year going to have a career year just by virtue of the fact that he's 27. Like he should have a career. All players 27 who are in the league should have career years. KCP to me is a better defender than Will Barton by a meaningful amount and probably an equal shooter, which is all you're going to need. Jamal Murray, the question about him and MPJ's health obviously looms over this. The last time we saw that roster, they were fully healthy. I'm going under the assumption that they will be fully healthy. And then you got a bench lineup that features the only guys that I kind of have penciled in for sure are going to be there are Bones Highland and Bruce Brown. The rest of the guys are a bit question marks, so you could look at that and say maybe it lessens them. But to me, the starting five is so much better or should be so much better than anything that they've had. And then the defensive versatility is so much better than anything they've had that I think it's going to work out.
So, like, if you face the Warriors, right, you've got now the option of basically you're going to have to send, you have to send levels of defense at Steph. But you've got KCP to guard Klay Thompson. You've got Bruce Brown take primary assignment on Steph. If they try the pre-switching stuff, you've got enough versatility to work around that. If they face the Mavericks, right, they've got Aaron Gordon to take on Luka Doncic.
They still, I think, need another wing, and that's the one thing about this that they probably need.
Unless Davon takes it, I think then maybe that's the argument. Is like, what if Davon takes a leap, right? Like if Davon makes a step forward, not a leap, but like a step forward. I think that's pretty solid.
Specifically in the ways that they need him to. So like he could end up becoming a better ball handler, a better shooter, like this. Those things are nice bonuses, but he needs to be a guy that you, to your point, can guard Luka for 5 to 10 minutes because you have your primary defender and you just need a secondary one, and he needs to grow into that.
Right. And so if you look around the rest of the Western Conference, like Gordon can guard Dame. We've seen that effectively, but he doesn't have to do it all the time now because you can put either KCP or Bruce Brown on him. The Blazers have a lot of forwards, but I think you can still attack them in pick and roll. The Grizzlies, I think it's great to have KCP, Bruce Brown, Gordon for Ja. That's
no question.
That's a really good thing. Like, they're just so much better built to, like, you're not trying to shut these guys down. You're just trying to survive them. You're just trying to have it be like, hey, we didn't give up a 120 offensive rating. We gave up a 115 and we scored 117. And that's, I think, is really it. And the fact they didn't have to give up any. I'm really impressed that they added defense without giving up spacing.
It's so true. That's exactly it.
And this was the big thing with Tybal, is that as high as I was on him, he just simply, like, he is a zero.
I don't think rotations are too complicated for Michael Malone, in that I don't think there are like, we can't play those two guys together. Right. There are going to be better and worse combos. There's going to be there's going to be better and worse ways to go about it. But I don't think it's one of those situations where you're like, we can't have Tybal and, whoever out on the court at the same time because the spacing doesn't work. Like, you can mix and match and have better and worse combos. Bruce Brown's an interesting one because I didn't get to give my thoughts on him. And to be honest with you, I only know his game from watching Nets. Like, Eastern Conference teams, I just don't watch nearly as much as Western Conference teams. But getting to dig into him a little bit, who I think, and I have to give a hat tip to Harrison Wind in the group chat, who kind of first pointed me to this, and then I start looking at it through this lens. Who he actually kind of reminds me of? This is going to be an insane comp.
Throw it to me.
Draymond Green.
Mm-hmm.
The guard Draymond Green. And what I mean by that is we'll keep talking about as the shooter because he shot well last year. I don't think he's a shooter. And I think Nuggets fans almost need to lower their expectation on him. He's a guy that the teams are going to leave him wide open, and I think he's going to be able to hit enough of those to keep teams honest, a la Aaron Gordon. Like, he might be an Aaron Gordon level shooter who's maybe a little bit more prone to hot streaks than Aaron Gordon is. Mm-hmm. So he's not like a knockdown guy, but if you're going to give him a wide open one, Nuggets have to trust him to hit it. But what he is like, he'll catch it wide open on the corner a lot and make immediate reads on it. So either it's a swing, dribble, pitch, and screen, or it's a drive to the basket. He has a very good floater. He just knows how to make plays, and he knows how to read the court. So I actually think he's going to be better as a flow basketball connector than he is as a straight floor spacer.
Yeah, and so I think you can go to the connector thing. I think is really interesting in terms of how that's discussed, especially like draft Twitter talks a lot about that, and it's valuable. It really is. Like it's definitely a thing. I think it's important. What I think is key is you have to have connectors. I think that can also be a finish point.
Sure. You have to have some kind of finishing. Yep.
Well, and I'll say this one thing with Brown that I was really impressed with last year is his floater. Like he's got a short mid game. And so I'm serious. Like that I think actually really matters on the short roll. Like especially if Jokic isn't out there, being able to hit short mid roll stuff, I think is really important.
He's also good at the lob pass, which is like a good counter to the floater. Because if you think about the floater, the big is sitting there in between two guys, right? Stepping up the help side big. And you either shoot the floater and he jumps to block it or whatever, or he fully commits and you have the lob over the top. And he's just like Draymond. He's sort of good at reading when to throw that lob.
Are you ready to take a break and we'll talk about the rest of the Western Conference?
Do you have any other takes on Bruce Brown? What's the downside here? This is my only question is Bruce Brown went for the mid-level, taxpayer mid-level. We're talking about him as if he's like a finishing piece here. And I believe that he is a really, really great piece. But what's the downside of him as a player? I almost want to correct a little bit down to, hey, but he's not a superstar.
I want to say rebounding, but you have MPJ. Like that's the thing is like.
Well, second unit though. Second, like Zeke. So on the board so far.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at this as like a
Jeff Green bad.
Like you mentioned like. You mentioned like they still need a wing, and I still think they need a big. Like if Zeke can't play 5, they're in trouble. Like they're in trouble if Zeke can't play 5.
He's got to be a rebounding monster this year.
Yeah, like I'll just tell you, like the plan is not for Jeff Green to play backup 5. They do not think of him that way. Right. So it's like literally like it's Zeke or maybe Bruce Brown playing small ball 5 in extremely small units. I know it sounds crazy at 6'5", but I saw the Nets do it sometimes. But they had KD.
I know. Yeah, I don't see the Denver doing that, especially with the other pieces in that second unit.
What if MPJ is a 5?
That's a quick way to get him to 30 games or less.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So this is kind of the downside. Is like there may be games where they just they dominate the offensive glass at the beginning of the first, the end of the second, the beginning of the third, and the end of the fourth quarters, and they get destroyed on the offensive glass. End second, start third, start second, end third, start fourth. Like that just may be a thing because I have zero confidence in their rebounding ability with Zeke Naji at 5.
Right. I
have no confidence in offensive rebounding ability or any rebounding ability with Zeke at 5 and
I wouldn't say I have no confidence. I would bet against it, but there is a chance. Like Zeke Naji was a good collegiate rebounder. It's been a part of his game. He needs to focus on it. There's parts of his game that I think he could probably cut out now. Like, if you remember last year this time, Matt, we were talking about Zeke Naji trying to expand his game. That was like the phrase they were using in the ramp up to summer league. I honestly feel like he can contract his game. You need to rebound, you need to shoot threes, and you need to guard the perimeter on switches.
Some of this I do genuinely wonder is going to be about what Zeke wants for his career because
totally is.
Like I asked Zeke last preseason, I was like, "How do you see yourself coming into this season?" Expecting him to be like, "Yeah, I'm definitely more of a 4," and he was like, "I'm a 3, I'm a wing," and I was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Okay."
Well, you know why? I wonder one reason why. Not to say it wasn't earnest, but there were minutes at the 3. Yeah. I mean, it could just be as simple as I know if I'm going to play, that's where it's going to be. Yeah. I don't know. I will say I talked very briefly with Calvin over the weekend, and I know that the one thing he talked about in that second unit was the shooting. Like, look at the bench shooting. Is there enough there? You've got Bones, you've got Zeke, you've got Davon, you've got Bruce Brown, and Jeff Green, DeAndre Jordan. That's like sort of the 6 men there. Maybe Christian Brown too. All of those guys have the ability to be good shooters, but all of them are not guys that you would say are knockdown shooters. Even Bones is like a bit of a streaky shooter. Like he's a good shooter, but he's a little bit of a makes 5 in a row, misses 8 in a row kind of guy. So I think that's one thing I look at with that second unit as a 5-man unit. But for Denver to be truly successful this season, I honestly think they have to stagger more than ever before. But they're set up to be able to stagger more than ever before.
Yeah, they can.
But we can't pencil that in, Matt. We just can't pencil it in that, of course they're going to blend and do this.
That's true. That's true. Michael Malone has to be committed to doing so. Let's take a break. I want to talk about this. I got a take for you after the break.
Ooh.
And I'll just go ahead and tease it right now. The West did not get better.
I don't
It
know when Matt has
absolutely
these takes.
did not get better. We'll do that when we talk more after the break, but first I want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline is the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. You get all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news like NHL playoffs, which are obviously over, which you can bet on next year's Stanley Cup Finals champion, Colorado Avalanche, obviously, and Major League Baseball. It's your continued source for all sports wagering information like live betting, esports, and scores. BetOnline.net's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite events like MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being along with us on a Tuesday after the holiday. Glad to have you on board, including in the channel where Leo's in there, and Alan, and Rayvon, and Charles, and Zamora's always in. It's a good time. Join the chat. It's a good time. We record most days, we record at 10 o'clock Mountain. And so, schedule note, things will be a little wonky later this week because Adam and I will both be in Vegas for Summer League. We'll have We'll have reviews of the Nuggets Summer League. We'll talk to you about the roster. We'll do all that more later in the week. As for right now, Adam, so let's look around the Western Conference. The Utah Jazz traded Rudy Gobert for 7,000 picks from Tim Connolly. The Minnesota Timberwolves added Rudy Gobert, giving up Malik Beasley and Vando and some more depth and all those picks, right? Yeah. So the Jazz, no one really knows if they're coming or going. There's a pretty consistent theme out of Utah that says that they're not going to trade Mitchell. They're going to try and build around him. I have to assume that they're going to be the one that ends up with Ayton. At this point, I have to assume that. Because I just can't see what their plan is otherwise.
Utah?
What are you doing? If you're still trying to compete with Donovan Mitchell and you don't get him a center, what are you doing?
If you swap, is Utah better if they have Ayton instead of Gobert? Are they better? I shouldn't say better. Are they better against the Nuggets?
No, they're not better against the Nuggets, but they're better, is my take.
Oh, wow, you went the other direction.
I went the other direction, yeah. So I think
I want to see Ayton without the defensive players around him. Like, I want to see if Jokic is. Remember when we thought Gobert had Jokic locked him up, and then all of a sudden they lose favor, they lose some of the other guys, and it's like, oh no, he's just murdering him. I think similar things would happen with Ayton.
So people are gonna say how did the West not get better? Look at all the, look at all the injuries. I'm not really factoring those. I'm talking about roster additions. Okay, if you're asking me, will Denver be better than last season? Yes. Yeah, hopefully, knock on wood, if they're healthy, then yes, absolutely. The Clippers, same deal. They get Kawhi Leonard and Paul George back. The Nuggets get Jamal Murray and MPJ back. Yes, those teams will be better than last season. I'm talking about in terms of roster construction, taking a step forward. I think if you look at it, maybe a better way to look at it is from where they were 2 years ago when the Nuggets were fully healthy to now. Right? And the answer is the Nuggets are better. I believe that. But the Warriors lost Gary Payton and Nemanja Bjelica and Otto Porter.
Yep. They're those guys were all extremely impactful in their playoff run.
Yeah. All three played in the finals. Bjelica was played off pretty soon, but he helped them in one of the games.
Yeah, but that's what a role player is. He was very useful in certain series and not useful in others, but that's exactly why you have a guy like that.
Right. So they can replace that with Kuminga and Moody. They can. They can replace that with Kuminga and Moody. And I don't know that they have to replace that, given that at the end of the day, you still are Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, right? And Klay's did not have a great playoff run, but this was his first season back from 2 traumatic injuries, right? They still have Wiggins. They're fine. The Warriors are still going to be not just a force, but in my opinion, the Celtics should not be the favorites. The Warriors should still be the favorites to win the title. The Clippers are the team that I've already bet on to win the NBA title.
I was going to say they might, to me, be the favorites. I mean, you're betting on health, but if we're going to do this for Denver, where we're also just kind of assuming they're somewhat healthy by playoff time, then we need to do that for the Clippers, and they run 10 deep of all guys that could swing any given game. They're top heavy with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but then they're also middle heavy with 7 guys that all can make an impact.
So, yeah, I think once they traded for Norman Powell and Robert Covington, I was like, yeah, the Clippers are going to be the bet to win the title next year. They're just like, the versatility is absurd. It's just absurd. Now losing Hartenstein hurts.
I was gonna say though, there's one area they're a little thin.
They're back to going to Marcus Morris at small ball 5, and I hate that lineup.
One area they're just a little bit thin.
Yeah, and so not a good matchup versus Denver, I don't think, again. But in general, like they're a team I think that got better. But the Warriors got worse. The Jazz got worse. Memphis got worse. Memphis lost Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Melton. Those are two guys that were really important players for them, not only in the regular season but in the playoffs. They didn't add almost anyone. Like Memphis didn't do anything.
I think the Jaren Jackson piece of that is also just kind of key. Like he'll be healthy by the end of the season, but he won't by the start, and you just never know how that goes. Like it's a little bit of a wrench.
And game 7s at home are important, right? Like regular season stuff is important for that.
Not even just that, just the idea of when you're a young team, like they are still growing into their identity. Like their identity is still evolving, and it's going to evolve over the first month or two without Jaren Jackson in a way that that's not great.
And so Memphis, I think, takes a step back. Dallas got worse. There's no way to argue against it. They lose Jalen Brunson.
Well, there's one way. Luka Doncic can be better. I mean, and should be expected. What is he, 23 years old? I know, like, we're on muscle watch with him more than any other player, but, he is so dominant, and we feel like he's still leaving things on the table that maybe he doesn't this year. I don't know, but that's one area they won't be worse than next year, but I don't think you can argue they're better.
They're going to be so Houston Harden-y, I think. I just think they're going to be. I mean, the defense should still be pretty good, but I think it probably takes a little bit of a step back. I think that they got like a high effort performance out of them this year, and everybody got paid, right? DFS got paid, and DFS played after he got the extension, and he's really good. But like, they gave JaVale $20 million.
JaVale's the interesting piece there, man.
And
he's so old.
And my understanding is honestly that JaVale's not even like considered to be like, hey, we don't have to play him in the playoffs. Right, which is like that's a lot to invest in a guy if that's where you're at. I'm never going to be a JaVale guy, so I'm just always going to be a little skeptical on JaVale, even though he's been a part of really good teams.
Yeah.
So
you get
Dallas.
You've left out. Now we get to the interesting teams.
Portland got better.
Portland got way better. I mean, they were terrible last year, so
yeah, Portland got way better. I will say, yeah, they're good. They're going to be above 500. They're going to be a playoff team. They're going to be in contention for at least the 6. I could see an outlier situation where they're like 3rd if they have one of those magical years.
Can they beat Denver?
No, absolutely not. Like, I don't know. Here's the thing: you can't play Damian Lillard and Yusuf Nurkic together, and then they refuse to accept this. Dame can't get over screens. Nurk can't play any covers but drop. So you are going to give up. You're going to give up dribble penetration, floaters, runners, and pull-up jumpers, and like pull-up threes. You're going to. You can send help. You have all these great wing defenders. You can send. You can try and hide him. You can try and hide Dame, right? Because you have these guys. But they also gave Anthony Simons.
I know. I don't. That's the craziest one. Maybe he's a trade piece or trade bait at December 15th or whatever. But I can't make sense of why they would do that deal other than like, hey, we're trading him midseason. And that might be, by the way, when we talk about KD, I sense that he is as likely to be moved on December 15th as he is this week or something, because there's just more suitors. There should be more suitors for him at that point.
Right. So I don't look at Portland and go. Like I look at Portland and go like, hey, good job. Like you made the roster better. Like you should be good this year. You will definitely be in contention for a playoff spot. It's entirely possible that we're talking about Portland as like, I don't know if they're better than Denver. Like we might be talking about that in like April. That's or March. Right. Like that's entirely possible. But
2 more super interesting teams.
I assume we're moving to the Wolves. Is that where we're going?
The Wolves are definitely one of them. I mean, come on, interesting. This is the most interesting team in the NBA, in my opinion.
I agree. My take on the Wolves is I think that they're going to win 50-plus games this year. So I don't know if that means 52 or 58, and that difference is massive.
That's a huge difference, yeah.
It's massive, right? And I don't know. I think I have a lot more confidence in the 2 big lineup than most people do, because I think they're going to be able to punish teams because of Towns' ability to space the floor.
How do you rebound against that team? I'm
Right.
telling you, I'm so like thankful for this team. Although I'm going to regret saying this like later on if they're look, Jokic. Where has he struggled in the past? It hasn't been against one big; it's been against two. Now I think Denver often when he struggled in those hasn't had the like perimeter options that they have now. So maybe you can mitigate that through other ways. That's part of the beauty of Jokic is he can beat you in a lot of different ways, or his teams can beat you in a lot of different ways. But to me, to win with two bigs, one has to be a perimeter player, which Towns is. He's just a perimeter. He's a 7-foot perimeter player at his best, and he could do the post ups. He'll probably do them a little bit less, but I think he's going to be outside. But more than anything, you have to be able to punish whatever it is the other team does. You're not going to do that defensively, even though Gobert's a good defender, a great defender. He's going to make an impact on that. They're still going to be vulnerable to teams going 5 out and just like murdering them that way. But the way they make up for it is they are going to murder the offensive glass. They're going to murder the defensive glass. I don't think these small ball teams are going to survive. There'll be variants. There'll be games where they stretch them out and are able to shoot and just go crazy from the perimeter, and they look terrible. And Minnesota looks terrible defensively. But I think there's going to be a lot more games where you look at the final rebounding tally, and it's going to be 65-38, and you're going to be like, holy hell, how did they grab 20 offensive rebounds and get 40 second chance points? And it's like, well, yes, they have two of the best rebounders in all of the NBA, who just so happen to be like so much taller than everyone and in certain configurations fit really well. So to me, I'm with you. I think they're going to be good. And I don't think it's just a regular season success. They're vulnerable in the playoffs just like everyone else.
Yeah.
And they might match up with a team that makes them look like, oh my God, how did that happen? But they also might not. And they might match up against other teams that look that way against them, where you think, how are they getting out rebounded this bad? Are they not prepared for it? So to me, I love them because they're such a weird wrench into what has been a trend towards one style. They're like, hey, let's try to swing as hard as we can the other way.
The biggest thing is if you can't play a better version of small ball than the teams that you're going up against, and very few teams can play like the best teams at it, like Golden State and Boston, the best way to do it is to punish it. You have to make it so painful that they're just suffering with it. If Kevon Looney sprains an ankle, what are the Warriors going to do on the offensive glass? They're going to score a ton, but the Wolves are going to have confidence they can score a ton too. The Wolves had an elite offense by the end of the season. They did. Yeah. And so if you're like, but they're going to give up so many points. Maybe, but they're going to have great rim protection. You're not going to be able to drive on them. And they have to, I think they got to trade D'Lo at some point. I think that happens. And the biggest thing, I think this isn't about necessarily next year, which is our topic, but my thing with this is it moves them closer. And yeah, you don't have the picks to work with, but you moves them closer, and they can try and figure out how to go from where they're at to the top. That's what
I think there's so many ways to wiggle out of the a lot has been made of that. Like, that's so many picks. Your handicap, you trade Towns if it doesn't work out, and you end up recouping all those picks. I don't care about that. I really do just care more about this idea of it's such an interesting zig, and I think people are underestimating exactly how dominant it's going to be on the glass.
We're running out of
by the way, Chris Finch. Very outside the box. Part of when Tim Conley and Chris went to Minnesota, my first thought was Tim Conley, extremely outside the box guy, willing to do the craziest things and say, hey, F it, let's try it. Chris Finch, also that. To me, it's one of 3 or 4 pairings where I'd be like, you know what? It has a good chance to work out. And it wouldn't work out everywhere, but there, I'm like, I think Chris Finch, one, he's already done this twice, the Balkan Buddy ball and the Anthony Davis DeMarcus Cousins ball. So he's already been willing to experiment with weird things. They're going to do it there. I would bet on it working out.
What was the other team that you thought was super interesting?
The Lakers. I don't find them interesting. They're annoying. But the Lakers are a team that, look, I still am not ruling out that their team is going to look ridiculously different by the time the season starts or by midway through the season. And I hate that fact, but I just still feel like it's there. So they're a team that, if you ask me, do they get better or worse, kind of went sideways. They're kind of the same team they were last year, but TBD.
If they get Kyrie, they'll be really good. But I looked at the rest of that roster, and I'm still like, woof. So we'll see what happens. But there's, of course, one big domino yet to fall in the Western Conference, and that's whether or not Kevin Durant ends up in the West. We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I got to tell you about Rock Auto. So this weekend, I need to get wiper blades, and I looked up which ones I needed, and I went to the auto parts store. And, of course, they didn't have the one that I wanted. So I just went on rockauto.com and got the wiper blades I needed. Easy. And they're going to be here tomorrow. It's going to be done. It's great. It's absolutely awesome. You save time and money at Rock Auto. You can spend sometimes even 100% more at these big block stores. A Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store. It's just $216 from Rock Auto. They're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being along for the ride. Hope you guys had a great July 4th weekend if you celebrate. So,
real quick, we didn't talk about Oklahoma City, Houston, Sacramento. I don't know if there's another one out there that I'm forgetting. San Antonio. Any of those teams move the needle at all for you? Like, are there any chance? Oh, New Orleans. We didn't even talk about New Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans is the big one. Like, New Orleans is going to be better. I'm just always... Whenever it's like they had this so much success and they get Zion back, like look out! I'm just always kind of like, They had a good run. They still had to sneak in through the play-in. They were still a sub 500 team.
They're not going to get better by the numbers of just like add whatever Zion's worth on top of what they already had. They're not gonna, that doesn't ever works that way. But I do think definitively they will be better, and it's not just because of Zion. I honestly think that for the first time there, they have a coach and culture, like a foundation in place that you get to build on top of now.
There's a high level of parity in the Western Conference. I think that's significantly higher. I don't know that Houston's going to necessarily go for it. I think they're still probably going to wind up tanking by the back half of the year. OKC, I kind of expect the same thing.
Tanking, same thing.
I think so.
San Antonio, I kind of think too.
So San Antonio will be taken harder than either of them. They will be. Really? They're going to be the worst team in the league. I think, on purpose.
Sacramento is
going to be really interesting.
I think they're good.
Keegan Murray's looking really good in Summer League, and Fox and Sabonis and Davion Mitchell, your guy, and all these types of things. Like
they got Herter. Honestly, they have shooting. They're going to have spacing around Sabonis. And Fox.
They have an NBA roster. They could be decent.
I think they'll be good. I don't think they're like a contender or like this or that, but I do think they'll be a team that mixes it up a little and high end could have a Pelicans-like season.
A Kings Pelicans playing game would be very interesting. I would enjoy that. All right, Adam, we got to talk about this. Okay. Things have stalled on the Kevin Durant front. We don't know what's going to happen. The Nets have done things like sign TJ Warren to a one-year deal. I'd heard that was in the works the week before free agency. I think some of that's probably that they told Warren, hey, if you don't get a better offer, come back to us and we'll do it. And it's like a handshake deal where it doesn't really matter what KD's doing. You're like, no. We said we'd sign you. We'll fulfill our promise here. Same deal, I think, with the Royce O'Neal trade, where they agreed to a trade with Utah, and then the KD stuff hit, and they're just like, well, we already made the agreement, so let's go ahead and we'll move O'Neal if we need to. So, Durant, I think, factors as heavy in the Western Conference conversation as anything, because if he comes here, he adds on to what is going to already be a very good team. If he goes to the Warriors, they're winning the title, the season's over, that's it. That's it. That's how it goes. And if that's how it goes, that's how it goes. And I fretted and lamented so much the first KD era. I've just decided to be like dead to it this time around. I'm like, okay, if that's how it goes, fine. We'll deal with this for however long it lasts. It'd be a bummer, but what can you do? I honestly said this last night. Like, I would respect it from the perspective of it makes so many people unhappy. Just everyone would be unhappy if KD goes to the Warriors. Not even Warriors fans would be all that thrilled. They enjoyed this title way more than they did the two with KD. Like, no one really gets like wins.
I can't believe it's a possibility. Like, I know I'm reading it out there. It's the type of thing, if you write, you're going to get clicks. And I believe that. I mean, obviously it's possible, but to me, I'm just looking at this and I'm like, would the NBA really do this? Like, can we really do this?
Spears reported it, and I trust him. But then Marcus Thompson was like, it's really, really super unbelievably unlikely. Phoenix, I think, is a real strong possibility. Like, I think that there's the best chance he winds up in Phoenix.
Odds there are the best for sure on Vegas right now. So that one's just as bad to me. Like, what is that package? Mm-hmm. And that one's more of a December 15th, is it not? Isn't that a sign Ayton now, trade him December 15th?
No, they could do the sign trade now. They could do the sign trade. Yeah, it's Ayton and Mikal Bridges go to Brooklyn, and KD goes to Phoenix along with whatever picks. And to me, if I'm looking at the options, if the Raptors are going to say we're not trading Scotty Barnes under any circumstances, there is no trade package that attracts me more than like. Well, let me ask you this because you're an OG guy. Would you rather have Ayton and Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr.?
Ayton and Bridges, no question.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think Mikal Bridges is as good, if not better, than OG Anunoby in terms of like what you're trying to do. So now you're really just getting the Scotty Barnes and or what was the one you said actually? You said Gary Trent?
Yeah.
Not even Scotty Barnes? Oh yeah, like I mean,
No, you're not. That's the whole thing. Is like that's gonna be the dividing line is whether or not Masai gives Scotty Barnes or not. Raptors fans are and media that know the team are 100% like they're not getting Scotty Barnes. They're gonna do this deal without him. They're not getting Scotty Barnes.
I mean, look, you have the thing about Toronto is they'd have to retool pretty quickly around Kevin Durant, and he's already like, I just don't know that you can do it. Like, I don't know that you win with Fred VanVleet, Siakam, KD. That's a great team. I don't know if are you going to beat Giannis? Like, I don't know. So you probably need to make additional moves that are probably going to take you at least a season to do. So I kind of understand it. Whereas if you keep Scotty Barnes, like, okay, you got a little bit more there to work with. So I get it. DeAndre Ayton's also like the superstar talent, at least, that you can bring in and say, okay, we have a cornerstone for this new era, whatever that is. You got Ben Simmons and then Mikal Bridges. Like, you know what? That is a phenomenal defensive 3-4-5. So it's at least the start of something, in my opinion, whereas the other package is a little bit more of we have a bunch of good players, but no start.
You mentioned that you hate the idea of Phoenix as much as Golden State, so I will bring something worse to your attention. Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook for Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant.
Oh, why would Brooklyn want Anthony Davis? Like, I mean, what's Anthony Davis's effort level of? Is he just a trade piece? You bring him in and flip him?
Yeah, that's my idea. Is like I would be looking to do that. I would be putting pressure on the Lakers and be like, you get Kyrie, who LeBron wants to play with, and you get the best player in basketball. If you think that
Kevin Durant. Here's the thing I keep thinking, and I guess KD doesn't have a say in any of this, but like all of these moves we're talking about, KD's going to have the weirdest like career we'll ever talk about. Like all of these moves are the lamest possible outcomes for a player.
According to reports, he wants to play with 2 All-Stars, and there's just not a lot of teams with 2 All-Stars.
Who does, KD?
Yeah. Like that's a requirement that was reported is like he wants to play with that minimum 2 All-Stars.
Bomani Jones was putting it out there to Mike. I love Bomani just because he's like, I mean, I love him because I think he's phenomenal at what he does.
Yeah,
he's also smart. Like, he's a rare example of people that like give credence to just other teams. Like, he's just not a guy that always talks about the same talking points about how can we get this guy to New York or whatever. And for whatever reason, he absolutely loves Jokic. And he really gushed over the city of Denver, and he's like, I know KD would love Denver. And I just thought it was the funniest thing I ever heard. First of all, I actually believe this. KD needs, like, in my opinion, I mean, this is, of course, I don't know KD well enough to say this with any confidence, but KD, I think, like, has been a guy who hasn't quite known what it is he's looking for. Like, he's looking for something and he can't find it. He keeps looking. To me, I'm like, KD might actually love Denver in that it's just a return to basketball. Like, it's just like basketball with like as few other things that you can possibly imagine. I wonder if he would actually relish that.
Okay, so before we get out of here, I'm going to ask you this. I mentioned
got
this.
Time. I ended up pushing back the DNVR show to.
Oh, okay. I mentioned the chat. I mentioned this to you in text, but I want to ask you about it. They'd have to move Ben Simmons first. Okay, this is a requirement. Right. They'd have to trade Ben Simmons in a separate deal. Jamal, the Nets call and they say, look, MPJ is a better prospect than we're going to get anywhere else. Jamal Murray, MPJ, 2 firsts for KD.
I mean, if you can get Kevin Durant and Jokic on the same team, you have to do it. And in my opinion, like we all love these players. And I do think from just putting on the fan glasses here, there's something really important that you lose when you become one of these teams. Like Denver has been this homegrown, like kind of like almost feels innocent style of basketball. And if you traded those guys, it would be like, well, what are we? We're just kind of like everyone else in this way. But if you talk about it from a logical basketball standpoint, there's no question you're putting 2 of the 4 best players in all of the NBA together who so happen to fit almost perfectly together from a stylistic standpoint. And, oh, by the way, this isn't a small thing because if Michael Porter Jr. is fully healthy for the next 5 years, this is all going to sound dumb. But the odds of him being healthy aren't that great. You get off of a max contract that might hamstring your team for 5 years. Like the ability to both bring in a near perfect running mate for Jokic or Jokic running mate for KD, however you want to sort that stupid conversation out. You bring in a perfect pairing, but then also you clear your books in a way that allows you to like actually build a more coherent roster now around him. To me, is a slam dunk. Like, there's no question about it. I don't think it'll happen. I think it's fun to talk about, but to me, you would have to do it, even at that price.
That would be. It would be awful for everyone involved, honestly. Like, it would just be awful for everyone involved.
I will say this, most likely. There is part of what makes it so interesting is I actually think it's going to be that way for KD almost everywhere he goes. This is what's so funny about the KD story. You go to Golden State, you don't think that's going to be an awful, like, is KD going to get what he's looking for in Golden State? They win a bunch of titles. Steph gets the credit. Like, he's still in that same exact spot. I think you go to the Lakers, it's certainly true. Go to Miami, there's some level of truth to it, I guess. I feel like it would be miserable, but less so than it would be in some of these other spots you're talking about.
People are so insane about this KD thing. Like David, I'm sorry, but like David's like, I do MPJ and Bones. Nuggets will still need a high end guard. Jamal stays, in my opinion. Okay, the Brooklyn Nets are not trading you. Kevin Durant. Like, this is how I am with the Raptors fans, where I'm like, it's possible. If KD says I want to go to Toronto and I don't want anywhere else, I will not commit to anywhere else. I'll want to trade. I won't show up. That's when teams are going to be like, well, I'm not trading for him if I'm just going to get myself a headache, right? Like, if he's wherever it is. Like, if he's like, I don't want to go there, you can't really take those offers seriously. If he does that with Toronto, then maybe Toronto's like, hey, we're not giving you he wants to come here. We're not giving you Scotty Barnes. And then the Nets are like, all right, fine. We'll take, like, Siakam. But, like, you do have to give up.
You have to give up a lot. KD has the best contract in the NBA. There's no player option. He's got 4 years left. Like, you kind of just own the rights. Like, wherever he goes, you're going to get that guy. And if not, you get to trade him for a high value as well. So for me, it's a no-brainer. You would do it. I don't know if it makes Denver a true contender next year. It makes them a true contender because KD and Jokic. But, like, the roster would be incomplete in a way that it's probably too late to, like, solidify it. But I do think over the life of that contract, both of their contracts, you're going to build a team that has the chance not just to win once, but probably to win multiple times as soon as you just put the right pieces around. You'd have KCP, Bruce Brown, Aaron Gordon, 3 defenders. You'd have Bones Highland still in your hypothetical. Like, you have pieces, you just don't have – it doesn't make sense. The roster doesn't make full sense, and it would probably take a year to get there. But you still have pieces. That roster would be incredible. And, by the way, if you got that roster, don't you think you would end up just getting, like, a Chris Paul here in a year or so? Like, you would just end up getting the guys that are like, I've got 1 year left. Where am I going to go? I'm going to Denver. I'm going to play with KD and Jokic. The most beautiful basketball in the world. I'm going to go finish my career ring chasing there.
I do like, I mean this seriously. I respect the chat because most of the chat's just like Sean, especially in the chat, is like, no. Under no circumstances do I want KD.
I get it though, Matt. I
do too.
It's not about the plus and minus of it all. It's like about, do I enjoy this? And so I totally get. I don't know if I would even be fully on board with it for that reason, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and if you're like, it is really funny to tell the difference between like our audience and like your average Denver Nuggets fan. To be like, we get KD, I don't care. Like, trade anybody except Jokic, I don't care. Right. You know, so look, I think the ideal scenario. Obviously, for the ideal scenario for Nuggets fans is that KD gets traded east. That's what you want. Is you just want to go to Toronto or Miami. Yep. I find a Miami deal to be very unlikely because he's not going to approve a deal with Bam going back. Right. And the deal does not work for Miami unless Bam's there. That to me is the thing. Honestly, I'm not just kidding. I'm not kidding here. If I was Miami, I'd be like, hey, what if we traded you Jimmy Butler? What would you like? If you kept Lowry and you kept Bam, but you traded Jimmy and Hero and whatever, like,
this is the more interesting thing. That is an interesting one from Miami because that's so cold blooded, and Jimmy Butler's like the perfect Heat player in my opinion. He's like made in a lab to be a Pat Riley disciple.
But he's already fighting with him. So
it's like the good fighting. I feel maybe not, but I do wonder if there's a way Denver can involve themselves in any of these deals as a facilitator. Especially if you're keeping them out east, because all the teams you're talking about have players that are like perfect for Denver. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, like these types of guys. And I just wonder if there's a way to say like, hey, can Denver involve themselves? That maybe hurts a little bit, but you wind up, you don't give up all the main pieces, but you know what? We're going to give up MPJ and maybe a Bones, and we're going to get back a Mikal Bridges in this deal. Like, I just wonder if there's a way for something like that to be baked into the deal.
Oh, I have one more that I thought would be really funny because everybody was talking about what they think is the funniest outcome for KD. Like Golden State is what everyone says is kind of funny after everything.
Oh, I don't
for him
think
to
it's
come
funny at
back.
all. I think it's 0% funny.
I have the opposite take, which is I think the funniest action is for him to go to Memphis. You go to the
Really?
team. You go to the team that Golden State was like annoyed with and feuded with in the playoffs, and was like taking shots at just to piss off Golden State. Like you go to Memphis and you
Yeah.
play with Ja and Jaren, and you've got 2 All-Stars, and you take back like whatever else in contract. Like you just take on all those things, and Memphis has got the pick equity and all those types of things. Like to me, that would be really hilarious to see like Memphis basically he gets to play with Steven Adams again, and like he goes to Memphis just because to piss off Golden State. I think it'd be a very trollish
Be
move
petty
from KD.
and then the
It'd be
stakes
petty.
are back on him. Like is that team good enough? Would you pick Memphis to win it?
No.
I wouldn't either. That's the thing is like
The only teams that I think become favorites if he goes there in the West are the Lakers, the Suns, and the Warriors, and the Nuggets.
I think that sounds about right. I think that
Those
sounds
4
about
teams,
right.
or let's throw in the Clippers too. If they trade Paul George for him, then
Hey, is there
Clippers.
any world? This is a crazy one, but is there any world where Tim Conley sees all of this and is actually lining up for December 15th, Karl Anthony Towns D'Lo trade?
Woo! Whew.
Everybody's like, they're gonna do Twin Towers ball. He's like, no, we're gonna do KD ball. We're getting Towns out of here.
Anthony Edwards, KD, and Gobert. Woo! Woo! I like it. All right.
Yeah. Let me just finalize with this. What are the odds KD is in Brooklyn to start the season, in your opinion?
God, that's a good question. 25%.
What are the odds that it's done, I guess, like this week? 2 years ago, we got the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George while at Summer League. I remember it very clearly.
From what I hear, I think the odds of that happening are low. I would say that there's like, if there's a 25% chance he stays in Brooklyn, there's a 75% chance that he gets traded. So I would say there's like a 10 to 15% chance it happens this week.
Is the DeAndre Ayton piece like on hold? Do you feel like the KD news, whether it's Phoenix or not, once that news drops, the Ayton news drops too?
Yes, I think they're related. I think if you're a team, like think of it, like if you're Utah and you're looking at the possibility of making an offer for Ayton, you're trying to work out a sign and trade, right? Or you're trying to work out like you're trying to figure out if you can get KD, and so you don't want to lose your equity there. If you're the Ayton camp, you're probably holding out because if you're like, wait, we can go to Brooklyn, that'd be amazing. Like there's all these things I think that are on the table, so I think that those two moves are directly correlated.
No. Somebody asked, should have signed Robin Lopez. I actually asked about this one. I know that they filled DeAndre Jordan's better for what they need, and just I think, it's funny because I think basketball Twitter in particular hates DeAndre Jordan for things that basketball Twitter values very heavily, whether it's right or wrong, and values Robin Lopez. I don't know. Like I know that I know that a lot of people with the team feel that Robin Lopez equally as sort of old and over the hump as DeAndre Jordan.
Yes. So, like, I disagree with this assessment, but their assessment is basically that DeAndre Jordan's a better rim protector than Robin Lopez. I don't agree, but I don't get paid a ton of money to make basketball decisions.
Rim protection part. I think it's just the verticality of it, too. Robin Lopez is a below-the-rim player right now, so...
I was told specifically by somebody that the rim protection was a part of it. Like, that was the...
No, I think it's a part of it, but I'm saying it's also just the, like... When you talk about they both have lost parts of their game, DeAndre Jordan still has the, like, jumps high.
Jumps high is
shots. And Robin Lopez has other parts, but doesn't have maybe the, like, left to right mobility that he used
I mean,
to
look, I'll say this, like... I don't think it's going to happen. I said that this is I still think this is a bad signing. I'm not going to get off of that move. But I'll just say this, like I've seen crazier things than a guy finding the right spot and getting his career together late. I've seen crazier things. If you ask me what's most likely to happen is that I think DeAndre Jordan's DNP by Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, he also could be traded at the deadline. I misreported this when it happened on this show, I think on Thursday, but he signs the 1-year deal, but he can be traded.
Yes.
The effective no trade clauses happen when you re-sign your own players to a 1-year deal, not when you sign other players. So he could be traded.
Yep. All right, that's gonna wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Good show today, guys. Good, enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. talking all things Summer League, getting you set for that, as well as whatever else goes on in free agency. Things seem to be calming down, knock on wood, or maybe not. We'll see what happens, and we'll have more conversation for you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great week. We'll see you again